Dear participants of the 12th World Theosophical Congress and participants of the TOS conference, I sincerely greet all of you on behalf of the Theosophists of Ukraine and members of the Theosophical Order of Service of our country. My heartfelt gratitude to Mrs. Nancy Sequist to the invitation to address you and to say a few words. Unfortunately, um, the state of war in which the people of Ukraine has been involved for 3.5 years doesn't allow me to be personally present in Vancouver. But I am grateful for the opportunity to address you at least virtually. The main idea that I would like to convey to you today at this solemn event is that selflessness, altruism, and service are the main features of a true a man with a capital letter, and then a man worth of being entirely written in capital letters. I decided to take this very topic because I have some life experience in this, especially in recent years. Perhaps Ukraine today is one of those places in the world where the inner growth of people is taking place at accelerated speed, where it is selflessness and even sacrifice that had led hundreds and thousands of people, both men and women, to the ranks of the armed forces, and the volunteer movement has become practically nationwide. Therefore, to some extent, I want to share with you some of my thoughts. The first of and the most important thing I want to start with is the inevitability of the awakening of altruism in a personal spiritual way. It was this very fact that almost 120 years ago pushed Henry Besant to create an additional department within the Theosophical Society to meet the clearly expressed and diverse needs of the then members of the Theosophical Society to change for better the world in which we live. H.P. Blavatsky indicated to Theosophy wrote that life acquires its true meaning only when its purpose became clear and when its brilliant possibilities are worthily appreciated. The most direct and surest way to achieve these high plans is to cultivate and develop the principle of altruism, both in thoughts and actions. The spiritual path involves conscious effort of a person towards his or her purification, self-improvement, and self-development. And this is a transfer of the consciousness focus from one's personality to the higher planes of the inner human essence, which makes it possible to master new, higher manifestations of love and wisdom, a more powerful outpouring of the light of our divine source for its transformation into truth, goodness, and beauty. The selfless urge to serve is an expression of love and comes from the plan of Buddha. But mastery of service is not by far achieved immediately and requires experience and its comprehensions. Experience is gained only in interaction with other people. If we consider the word love not an expression of a feeling or emotion, but as a verb, then love is identical with selfless giving, sharing, serving, making one's own specific efforts to the sake of the goal which we consider to be directed towards the commonwealth. In the Bible, there is an expression that a person is revealing himself or herself along the road. That is during a common journey. And this is true, because only on a common life journey we can learn to feel the needs of people close to us and learn to respond to them positively and effectively. If we are talking about the skill of service that we acquire through our experience, then there are certain patterns in acquiring this skill. So first, we learn to give what we have in abundance, or what we ourselves no longer really need. This can be material things, or time, or just our attention. At the next stage, we try to do for people close to us what we personally consider necessary and right for them. And then we analyze the results of our charity and sometimes come to disappointing conclusions. There is even such an apt saying, I wanted the better, but it turned out to be like always. This is how we learn to perform charitable acts and become convinced that this area has its own laws of genre. Charity is not so much a science, but an art. And this art is performed not for the visual success, someone's praise, but for the sake of a deep inner feeling of having fulfilled a duty to one's own conscience, to people close to us, to nature, to the universe, to God, and a quiet feeling of joy to be his hands in this cruel world will be a real gratification. Service has its own levels, which can roughly describe, let's say, as a level of consequences and a level of causes. As a rule, in our service, in our charity, we often focus on the level of consequences, because consequences are visible. They have us feel uncomfortable. They urge us to immediate actions. Such service is about providing help to orphans, disabled, wounded, our smaller brothers. Such service means environmental actions, etc. In this case, we face the situation that happened for reasons beyond our control. But we realize that something must be done about it. So we must look for the problem solution. In traditional society, problems were solved at the level of the family or clan. Nowadays, we have reached such a level of problems that the effort of individual close people are no longer enough. Today in the world, there is a huge network of international, governmental, and not governmental institutions that are trying to solve such problems with different level of effectiveness. But unfortunately, problems multiply and grow in their threatening force. All mentioned above suggests that only eliminating the consequences of negative phenomena around us does not eliminate the threat of this problem recurring, and therefore is not an effective means for influencing the situation. Now, if we think about the reasons that make people suffer, experience hardships, and deprive them of the opportunity to cope with their problems by themselves, we'll see that this is also a complex and ambiguous issue. Taking into account the generally recognized fact that the modern problems of humanity are anthropogenic in their nature, someone might see a way out of crisis situations in expanding the scope of international agreements focused of increased cooperation in order to prevent certain negative consequences of human life activities and industrial production, and creating an appropriate apparatus of control as well as introducing sanctions in case of a violation of their agreements. Yes, indeed, these tools are also very necessary, but the lower essence of human nature finds a way to circumvent all preventive measures. I will give an interesting example that I read about in the web. A large enterprise that produced chemical products dumped its wastes into the pond. As a result, the nearby city and other settlements were deprived of high-quality drinking water, and the water treatment plants could not cope with their task any longer. In response to complaints from local authorities, the owner of this enterprise publicly announced that he was starting production and sale of high-quality bottled drink water for the needs of the population. Thus, it appears out that modern morality also allows to make a profit from environmental pollution. In my personal opinion, as well as the opinion of my colleagues with whom we have been conducting the annual International Forum Ways of Spiritual Development for Man and Society for the last 25 years, the effective methods for overcoming crisis phenomena in society are educational activity, broadening people's worldview, awakening compassion and selflessness service, and the revival of high moral values. All these are signs of humanity to which our soul has always been aspiring. Who else but us, the Theosophists, should ensure that these traits gain social appeal? Unfortunately, in our society, selfless service has not yet become an attribute of elitism, a sign of a truer leadership. And we desperately lack state leaders who are not tied up by their selfish and pragmatic motives, who are able not only to proclaim and demonstrate selfless service, but to adhere to selfless service principles throughout the whole period of their official activities. And indeed, in the non-historical period, one can count on the fingers the number of leaders who have shown and clearly demonstrated their sacrifice and certain self-denial. One of the well-known examples of such leaders is Mohandas Gandhi. H.P. Blavatsky in the Key to Theosophy says, to give more to others than to oneself is self-sacrifice. This is a measure and criterion that has distinguished the great teachers and mentors of humanity. All religions of the world, each in its own way, state that the truest service to God means serving people. Thus, the traditions of the world understand service as a spiritual path. Improving oneself in service is at the same time both improving and rising to a new, higher level of service itself. Starting with helping victims and deprived people, we must go further and look for ways to prevent calamities and suffering of millions of people in our world. Service should be considered as a natural divine ability of a person, as a sign of his or her humanity, as a joy, as a source of strength, and then it is transmitted by a chain reaction. Service should be considered as a manifestation of a mature personality that is already in the permanent contact with its higher self, its Atma, the evolutional principle. In the future, the spiritual flourishing of human personality will allow to release the hitherto hidden potential energy of goodwill. And it is exactly through service, united our goodwills at the planetary level, that it will be possible to change a life of the planet on Earth. This applies to all forms of life, because they all are subject to human influence. So the spirit of altruism, of selfless service, is already beginning its progression. Like all living processes, it is not linear in its dynamics, but rather exponential. It is maturing now, but the course of this process will eventually become so rapid that it will transform human nature and will determine the glorious future fate of the planet. In conclusion, a few more sayings by H.P. Blavatsky. In her article Modern Progress in Theosophy, she says, we put forward a solemn statement about altruism as the first in our declared goals. And we are trying to ensure the emergence of better laws through practical activity. In addition, the key to Theosophy says the following: no new revelation is needed, that each person become a revelation for himself. Let the immortal spirit of man one day take possession of the temple of his own body, expelling from there the money changer and all uncleanness, and his own divine humanity will free him, for having become one with himself, he will also recognize the builder of the temple. The ability to recognize comes not from books and not from philosophy alone, but above all from the truer pursuit of altruism in deeds, words, and thoughts. For the practice of altruism cleans the shells of the soul, allowing light to penetrate the earthly mind. So, dear friends, colleagues, sisters, and brothers, let's join our efforts on the path to good, to humanity, to the bright future of humankind, and let everyone find their own path to the common goal. Many thanks to all of you for your support of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Thank you for your attention.